Have you seen leaders that confuse activity with progress? Meetings, emails, instead of results with customers? They may be great meetings. Everything looks good. But what you probably have is an imbalance of an emphasis on internal and external efforts. So how much energy should we spend on internal versus external? Here's three aspects of the problem that we're trying to solve. One is, as you look across the organization, do leaders seem to be always out of time and low on energy or enthusiasm? Second one is, do the people working always seem to have demands for the leaders, or are they always waiting on something from the leadership? And then there might be just a general frustration with lack of results on the outside with your customers or with your partners or stakeholders. And where this shows through is in what I think we've got nailed down here as three levels of leadership that I want to talk about. The first level is what I'm called baseline mechanics. And the focus of this type of leadership is inward and down. What are the processes that we need to develop that are we using? Are we doing things correctly? Are the right people talking in the right ways to the right people? You need those. Every team needs those SOPs. But something to keep in mind is the customer is not paying for that. Doesn't mean you don't need it. What's some of the other characteristics of this inward focus? It can be very time consuming. You want to get a lot of input. You're going to put out a lot of paperwork. It takes time. And you see this a lot in the military. What is the requirement for this in the first place? In the military, it's acquisitions, it's buying, spending a lot of taxpayer money on things. Well, what's the requirement? How are we going to use that in a war? For you, is it customer driven or not that we're working on, the thing that we're working on? So some of the ways you want to analyze the amount of effort put into level one leadership is, can it be automated? Whatever we're trying to accomplish, can it be automated? Can we use AI these days? Even if something is necessary, we should try to execute it as efficiently as possible. Do we have the discipline to require everybody to do these processes in the same way, in a standardized fashion? Maybe not every single person, every single aspect. That's probably not the goal. But you want to have the majority of the organization operating in a standardized way when it comes to internal process. And then what's it going to take to maintain consistency with these processes? Now, two people thrive in level one leadership. One is the frontline supervisor and the manager. They do need to oversee the efficiency of the work being done. The other person that lives in level one is the micromanager. There's tons of things to involve yourself with. It's probably fairly low risk, and it's all internal. You don't have to deal with the external predictability of customers, the market, or your competition, or your opposition. But for a frontline supervisor, frontline manager, this is probably where you're going to at least start out. Level two can be, I like to think of it as floating. So on one hand, you're getting into a level of management or leadership where you have to wrestle, or you have to come to grips with how much autonomy people need to do their job. And they should have autonomy to do things. They have to see themselves as professionals. And you not being involved in every little thing they do is part of that. But what we can see at times too is that we take it too far and we go totally hands off. You're inwardly focused, but you're stationary is the way I think of it. And I think, from over the years, from being in the Marines and everything, you get to be maybe more of a level two leader when you get a couple of years of experience under your belt. For me, it was when I went from being a second lieutenant to a first lieutenant. I think of it as being overly practical at the time. A little bit of the Dunning-Kruger effect too, because I didn't know enough to know that I was doing things suboptimally. So the characteristics here are, you are providing your people a lot of flexibility on the way they execute their jobs. Again, that is probably good in a lot of ways. But the second characteristic is where you get into trouble is when something becomes painful, you overemphasize feelings over the mission to be accomplished. Should you be concerned with people's feelings at all? Yeah, you should be concerned. If somebody has legitimately got their feelings hurt, you may need to address that. But the point is, you don't make decisions on behalf of the team because of how you think somebody might react. You can't control that anyway. And the other characteristic here is we just don't seem to be moving forward. We've taken on a lot of these internal efforts, or maybe even they could be external, but nothing is really getting completed. So your managers, they're overly concerned with the feelings of the people on the team, overly concerned. And what does this look like when you got level 2 in action? It's really hard for teams to have healthy conflict. Things end up being seen as personal attacks or people get insulted. They're placing themselves above the health and the needs of the team, the group. And the status quo is fine. We've been doing it this way. Let's just keep doing it that way. People seem to like it. But what that results in at times is you don't put your customers first. They're not asking for the way things used to be done in the past. They don't like that product anymore. We're getting all kinds of signals that we need to evolve. And when you need to change or evolve, that's going to upset people. And when you're in level 2, it's not your strong suit. And lastly, and this is what you're going to learn over time. And I think for me, it took some years to realize this, but even though you are so focused on what you think people want and need to do a good job, they still end up frustrated. And why is that? Because the results are not there. People are working hard, but we're not getting any better. We're not making more money. Our customers still seem to be fairly dissatisfied, which brings us into level 3, which is where you want to end up as soon as possible. And that is that you're externally focused. Focus is outward on your customers, on the market, your competition, opposition. In the Marine Corps, it's your enemy, and forward in time. You're not thinking about what's going on today and tomorrow. You're thinking about the future and what the needs will be in the future. So when you're at level 3, you're going to look back on level 1 and level 2 like this. Level 1, that's being handled. We got the basics of what we need to do figured out. I just need to maintain that at a minimum. So I'm not going to dedicate big chunks of my time into making sure that the internal workings need constant attention. Or if they do, you've got somebody doing that. You've got that delegated. Level 2, you know now how to deal with people's feelings a little bit better. You've got that calibrated against what the group needs to achieve. So what you do when you're into level 3 is you're good now at giving direction, or maybe if it's not direction and specific guidance on what is on the table or off the table, not possible. Do you still consider people's feelings, wants, and needs? Yeah, you do, but you just don't prioritize that above the good of the group. And then the internal workings of your team are a direct reflection of what your customers want. Quality is a good example of this. A customer is not going to pay you extra to fund your quality program that just sucks up hours. They assume you're trying to sell them a quality product or a service. So you got to keep that in mind. What is the customer really paying for? And what are the impacts when you can successfully move into level 3? Because level 1 and 2 are fairly handled, you know how to handle them better, you've got more time to look outward. You can lift your head up and see what's coming. You're more agile. You can react to situations as they come up, as opposed to being completely clobbered with internal requirements and not having any bandwidth to react. Or not just react, but anticipate what's coming next. And in the end, your customers experience better responsiveness. You're more focused on what they need instead of what you're trying to do inside. How do we put this into action? 3 principles, things to guide your way of thinking. Routines, SOPs, process. The reason you have those is to free up your cognitive capacity to look out, understand what you're dealing with, and deal with real situations. The inner workings is not the destination. External, customers are. That's where the results come from. Stability, you have to be a little skeptical of your ability to maintain stability in terms of people's feelings. You can't control that. And then because the external environment is so unpredictable, you have to be ready to meet those challenges. And number 3, if you're in a leadership position, you got to do whatever it needs to be done, whether it's things I talked about already or other things, to first look outward on what's needed. Because in a high-performing organization, your contributions, your results on the outside are going to be 10 times more important than whatever you do on the inside. And 3 actions, things you can start to do today. Go through your SOPs and make sure they reflect what the people that are interacting with the outside need. Does the end result of an SOP have some sort of value, maybe indirect, but to the customer? You have to, in some way, and this is really hard to do, but you have to, in some way, turn your learning into a loop instead of a straight line. When you experience things, you never hear about it again. You have to get some sort of feedback loop in there to reflect what the market needs are, what your customers are saying, And the goal is meeting those needs and being more efficient. Anytime you execute something worthwhile, you got to somehow figure a way to come back, get the team together and say what went well and what did not, and get those lessons back into the front end. And then 3, talk about this in a lot of my videos, you got to empower decentralization. That's the only way that to maintain not just speed, but to enable people to make the decisions that they need to make when they see a problem or an opportunity developing. Part of that is realizing that you probably don't have the answer back in the office. Your people out in the field are seeing things real time. And that's it. 3 levels of leadership. Hope this helped you out. If it did, consider liking and subscribing, following along for other leadership videos like this. The focus of this channel is you got to learn how to lead the people that you have right now. Not wait for some miracle cure in the future, but how do you take the people that come to work every day right now, make them better, and thereby make the team better. Thanks.